With an intro like that, I really have to live up to it, don't I? It's a hell of an intro. When I was 17, I was going to a performing arts high school. So this is the kind of place where, from the age of around 14 on, they start teaching you Stanislavski. Uh-huh. So you've got 14 and 15-year-olds walking through the hallway saying things like, "I am trying to have an emotional memory," before seeing study. So this is a place that's maybe, let's just say, given to drama. And when I was 17 years old, a classmate of mine, who I'm going to call Celeste, who was a part-time model and beautiful and very together and a very good actress and the whole bit, for reasons best known to herself, cut her wrists one Saturday night. And she lived. And we heard about this, and she came back in a week. A little bit tranquilized, a little bit different, wearing conspicuous bandages. Didn't talk to anybody about it, maybe only her circle of friends, only the girls, never the guys. And by the time she came back, this was kind of seen as something equivalent to hijinks, you know? Some girls go out and they cut their hair too short, or they dye their hair purple, or they get their ears pierced 6 times, or they have a party and they trash their parents' house. In Celeste's case, she cut her wrists. And by the time she got back, everyone felt at ease enough with it, for want of a much better word, to kind of make fun of it. Like she was never an overachiever, therefore she couldn't cut her wrists properly. Remember that? Cross for show, down for go. H for hospital, H for heaven. And these were her friends doing this. We just found it incredibly witty at the time. And Celeste was one of the people that I had to deal with around 4 months later. Someone I want to call Zoe actually did kill herself. And I'm not trying to be artsy with the name. Zoe means life in Greek. I am not trying to be poetic with this. I've never known a Zoe. I've never met a Zoe. The name Zoe is about as far away as it can possibly be from my actual memories of the event. What Zoe did was she took 2 bottles of 222s and killed herself on a Saturday night, and we found out on a Monday. I found out walking into a hallway, seeing 3 or 4 people staring at each other, being catatonic. I didn't say anything until one of them got up and started to cry. And my first response was, "Zoe?" Because she had been leading up to this for what felt like a very long time. And one of the reasons I was twitchy is that I had talked to her 5 days before. I'd been on a class trip to Russia. I had just gotten back, and she asked me about it. She didn't look particularly different. She didn't look particularly upset. She looked like she'd been crying. It is a drama school full of 16-year-old girls. I guarantee, with all due respect, a lot of them were crying half of the time. The interesting part was that her wrists were very, very skinny. She had been anorexic at one point. It had gone up and down. All I remember from that particular meeting, it was completely inconsequential, except for the fact I knew. I couldn't remember what her wrists had not looked skinny. I don't remember the point of normal. And as I'm trying to deal with this, Celeste comes in and gets the news and is in the same shock as anybody else. And she's sitting across from me. And I'm waiting for her to explain why Zoe killed herself. Because that makes sense, right? Because Celeste obviously thought it was a good idea at one point, and she got through it to the other side. So I'm staring at her. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not that stupid. But I am stupid enough to keep staring at her wrist and to keep staring at her eyes, because I'm really hoping she's going to tell me why the hell this has happened. And 30 years later almost, I would apologize for this if it ever came up. And I still see Celeste. She shows up at the same parties I go to sometimes. Scars are almost gone, but you can almost see them when she lifts her hand to pick up a glass of wine at the party. So 5 years later, I'm 22 years old. I'm just getting out of university. It's my last year. It's my senior year. I am in a writing workshop. It's an undergraduate workshop full of short stories. Whatever you're thinking, you're right. Nothing particularly brilliant, but it's a writing workshop. You're supposed to go there and get criticized and do better. I have made the mistake of saying I've based this story on something that I've lived through. So everyone is believing that this is a true story. It is a true story. Maybe I shouldn't have said it. Maybe it wouldn't have been jumped on in the same way. And I'm waiting to be jumped on. I really am. Tell me it's maudlin. Tell me it's melancholy. Tell me I shouldn't be writing it. And I'm there. Tell me I should tear the thing up, and I'm definitely going to be there. But I'm trying to write something out. I'm trying to write out every moment of dealing with Zoe. Because I've got this idea that if I do, it'll illustrate it enough that it will get the hell out of my head. And I've got Dylan Thomas going through my head. About 4 years of writing classes at university. I've got Dylan Thomas the death of a child, the refusal to mourn the death of a child by fire in London, which has nothing to do with Zoe, which has nothing to do with my life, except for one line. I will not murder the mankind of her going with a grave truth, nor blaspheme those stations of the breath with any further elegy of innocence and youth. In other words, don't bring out violins. Don't make this poetic. Just recite what happened. And that was the point of my story. Everyone in the class thought it was okay. It's almost off my back. One woman, let's just call her Lindsay, fixated on one very strange point. And her point was, I don't think I can believe her wrists. I said, okay, her wrists look skinny. I didn't think she was going to kill herself because her wrists look skinny. It's just something I noticed at the time. She used a lot of air quotes, did Lindsay. So she's saying, so did you remember this after she killed herself? I said, no, I remembered it before that. It doesn't matter to me that her wrists were skinny. It was just something that I had noticed. Well, I think maybe that you've invented it. And I'm beginning to question my own mental health. Remember the theme of all this, mental health? I'm questioning my own mental health because I don't know why she's taking exception to this. I don't know why I'm taking such exception to this. Other than if you tell me the story's invalid, I can live with it. But you can't tell me I don't remember what I saw and why such an inconsequential piece. The idea that she wanted some type of bizarre closure on this event, because if she doesn't believe the wrists, then maybe the rest of it is invalid. I'm questioning my own sanity for writing this and for taking exception to this, and I kept going back to the idea of closure, and I wanted to tell her, there was a closed casket. That's it. As trite as it sounds, that is as close as we're going to get to closure in this case. And I finally screamed at her. I said, listen, if I had told you that she was wearing a green sweater with floppy sleeves, would you have taken exception to that? You've chosen one aspect of this story, and you're telling me that I don't remember it, when every day for the last 5 years, I feel like I'm writing over a grave when I talk about this? So we're sent to our separate corners, and I get a very odd apology, something along the lines of, I'm sorry that what I said upset you. The kind of non-apology you usually get in that kind of circumstance. That has never left me, and it's 28 years later, and the event has never left me for two different reasons. And the event, because it proved to me, it changed me to realize that you can't take mental health, and however you want to define that, this might fit. You cannot take it for granted. You cannot assume that the mechanism does not occasionally break down. And Lindsay's dismissal of that also got nailed into my head, because it's a very easy thing to believe that you are always going to have that equilibrium. And I am still remembering this and writing about this 28 odd years later, because I keep thinking if I can recite it, if I can account for every moment, it might make a case for that understanding. And there's a danger there, because you're going to become maudlin, or you're going to become fixated, or going to become blind, or you go back to Thomas, and you're going to blaspheme those stations of the breath with another elegy of innocence and youth. Thanks a lot for your time.